Hello and welcome to Tonight at 8 from the RSGB. Field day contests are an exciting way to experience amateur radio in the great outdoors and combine teamwork and friendship with the challenges of putting together a competitive radio station in the middle of a field. Tonight we'll be looking specifically at VHF Field Day events and later meeting the enthusiastic team from Lothians who have been actively taking part in VHF contests for many years and will share videos and even cine-film from their early days. But first we're going to meet Richard Staples, G4HGI, who's a member of the RSGB VHF Contest Committee who organise and set the rules for the Society's VHF contests. And if you're watching this on Monday the 4th of March, then this is live and you can ask questions and make comments on either YouTube chat or BATC messaging at any time during the presentations or straight afterwards. Please include your first name and call sign if you have one within every message. And note that you can make this video stream fill your screen on most devices, usually by double clicking on the picture or pressing the full screen button. So now let's find out how the RSGB VHF contests are organised. And welcome to Tonight at 8, Richard.
Okay, thank you very much, David. Welcome to everybody. I've been obviously been around the contesting scene since for quite a while, certainly from the late 70s, and I do remember VHF Field Day very fondly, getting soaking wet and sheep and cows chewing the guy ropes and all that sort of stuff. So what I was hoping to do is just to put together a little bit of an insight into how we try and set the rules and try and look at developing the VHF contest, particularly with looking at VHF NFD, because the past few years hasn't been great, obviously with the lockdown and everything. So we've had a fair time trying to get keep the thing going and try and make it interesting and developed for everybody. So that's just a quick look at my setup at this end. I'm on the 64270 and 23 in various ways and means. I tend to look at the low power contests sections, and also I do actually try and look at things from a northern perspective, which may be a bit different. But anyway, so the RSGB contest committees, the VHFCC is responsible for the contest strategy basically for the RSGB, and there has to be a balance of contest development, rules, adjudication, and development through consultation. Now, the VHFCC committees will be responsible for communication in and out of the RSGB, and Andy, G4PIQ, is the chairman, with 10 members of the committee, which we meet regularly. The CSC, which you all know, are the fantastic folks who actually do all the adjudication and administration of the contests, and also, which is a very big job, the trophy and award administration. We have a team of dedicated volunteers, and in 2021 we administered 214 contests, both HF and VHF, and the CSC also provides support and advice to the HFCC and VHFCC. And Chairman Ian, G0FCT, plus the fantastic 12 adjudicators. I've got to say, frankly, the amount of number crunching is staggering. You might think a lot of it is all automated. It is to a point, but there's a whole load of manual intervention. So throughout the year, the VHFCC monitors all feedback from contestants in an attempt to formulate ideas for the RSGB convention, where it all seems to accumulate ideas, and the contest forum is usually a good place for that, where things can be aired in public. It can be a bit tense at times, but as we know, We get ideas from direct requests, the UK VHF Contesting Facebook group, and also the soapboxes which people put in when entrants put in when they send the login. Sometimes they tend to let off a bit of steam as well, but with all good intention, I think they try and get us to look at the rules and look at that type of thing. So this is all basically to try and make contesting more enjoyable. As we all know, we really want to looking at newcomers into this area of the hobby, and particularly the young, the youth side of it as well. The VHFCC also resolves disputes in conjunction with the CSC when the need arises. Sometimes not always to everybody's satisfaction, but there we go. We use SurveyMonkey for the consultations, and these are basically put together after the convention with some questions and looking to see what areas we can either improve on, or in some cases actually get rid of a few contests who we possibly feel is a bit they've kind of run their course. Now, VHF specific, VHF NFD specific. I always like looking at the adjudicators' comments from each set of results, because it tends to give a lot of information as regards activity, whether it's up or down. In this case, for 2023, Quinn G3 Whiskey Romeo Romeo, he's seen an increase over the 2022 entry, and that basically also goes to the sweepers, which have now become quite a part of the VHF NFD scene. You might think it's all out in the field, but to be honest, the sweeper section for fit stations has really caught on, and that's good because it gives basically more stations to work, and they have a purpose in actually doing the contests. So we might have highlights of VHNFD. There can be many lowlights, as you'll see in a minute. Comments from folks who send the logs in, particularly there with the can report much food was consumed, washed down by plenty of custard, that type of thing. It's all done in good humour. And you can see there, EI9E, they actually managed to take a dishwasher up with them, which I think is good. That's quite heroic, to be honest. Hopefully they've plenty of generator power, which I'm sure they have to keep that thing going. The comments are really good because you tend to get a flavour of what the contest was all about. And I think probably one of the best ones is Super Weekend, and it can be a super weekend, obviously depending on the weather. Not so highlights of VHNFD. We do tend to get a lot of bad stories about antenna faults, generator problems, rotator problems, wasps, nests, things like that. But all that meant that we get the full picture of how the event has gone. And as you can see there, G3's NME stroke P up to the rears in wires and one thing and another. And also it must have been a hot day because they've actually got a fan running, which is good. Some of the VHF field days I've done have been something that's a bit like the Arctic, but anyway. So here we go. This is the idea that we have for doing the surveys. Now, the surveys they're pretty simple, I suppose, in effect. This is from 2023, going back to general contesting now, where the Christmas cumulative, we ask people whether they want to move the contest to the 27th, keep the same time, keep the same dates, we tend to get a lot of, I have no strong opinion and I don't plan to enter the contest, which is a bit of a shame. Particularly 2023, 315 people actually answered, which is very good. We don't usually get that many. So at least it gives a broader idea of what's happening. Question 2 was the log submission. Now we are governed with a lot of the contests that are actually coordinated with the IARU. So if there's any of that involved, then they have to go in by 3 days. But the general view was basically to keep the log submissions down the same as it has been for 7 days. And we're conscious that there are groups who type up logs. I mean, years ago at Bolton, we used to have a guy who he was really badly with his sight, and he used to actually write his log on wallpaper, and then we used to type it up for him afterwards. That's all part of the spirit of contesting, which is good. We then went to the structure of the FMACs, and we, in the end, looking at the responses we got, we looked to change it to the full license, the intermediate and the foundation classes. And you can see there on the right, that's how the graphs basically portray the input. But unfortunately, obviously, I do not intend to plan the contest. It's a fair old size of the 317 people that replied. 6 and 4 meters AFS bonus mults. That was a pretty strong result in the end. Moved to the bonus scoring system, so we actually went with that for this year. And again, it's good. 311 people actually putting in their opinions, which is basically what we're after. We had a major time with lockdown, obviously with COVID. 2020 VHF NFD, that was really tough because there's a lot of decisions had to be made, what we were going to do, how we were going to do it, and in the end, there were 75 participating groups made out of 286 individual call signs. So I think we did it right there. We had to, obviously there was all kinds of restrictions that we had to abide by. But after lockdown, you can see there that the adjudicators' comments, which I do like reading, as I said before, they do see an upturn in activity, which is basically what we're all about, really. So it's very good to see, particularly in 2023, that the entries are up, albeit in some of the sections they're probably about the same. But you can see right at the bottom there, it says the same upward trend applies to the number of sweepers, which at 68 was 42% above on 2022, which they're the bread and butter for the portable stations. So that part seems to be doing okay. So I'm just going to wrap up now. I've got to say a massive thanks to the adjudicators and the CSC members, because without these folks, it wouldn't happen. Excuse me. Ian G0FCT is the chairman of the CSC, and then you've got a list there of all the adjudicators, and in particular, I've got to mention Jackie G6XSY. She's retired now as the trophy manager, but we have hundreds of trophies. All needs managing, all needs engraving, all needs sorting, and we're desperately looking for another trophy manager. So I've got to put a plug out there if there's anybody that could do something like that. And also Mike G0GJV, who's Mr. Minos, and Mike's good offices control the number crunching in the adjudication system. Simone M0BOX, she does tends to do all the data contests, which are pretty much always on HF. But there's a whole bunch of very experienced people there who take absolutely they tirelessly look at all over the entries, and always looking for the best outcome for whatever problems exist. So, if anybody wants to find out more, we are pretty accessible. We have the website, which is the RSGB website, the VHF contesting website. If you've got any suggestions or queries, vhf.query@rsgbcc.org. Thank you very much. Sorry about that. We've got Facebook, the UK VHF UHF Contesting Facebook page, which we do monitor, and there's quite a few good sort of suggestions come out of that. There's a bit of angst as well sometimes, but anyway, you've got to mix the two. We will have a table at NASA at the Blackpool Rally, so if anybody wants to come and say hello from the contesting fraternity, that'd be fantastic. The National Hamfest apparently is back on, so it's we have a customary to have in amongst all the RSGB stuff. We'll have 27th to 28th of September 2024. We'll have some certainly some representation there. Quite possibly me and Stephen, GW4SHF. We seem to be good little buddies for doing that. And then obviously we've got the RSGB convention, which has on Sunday has the VHF contest forum. So basically that's it. Bit of what we're looking for, please, is constructive comments, criticism. Fair to say, but at the end of the day, it's all done in the way we do things is to try and increase activity, enjoyment of contesting, and whatever you've got, there's plenty of avenues there to try and send in any comments or suggestions. So that's basically it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Richard. So we've seen the background to VHF contests, and now let's see how one club puts all of that into action as we meet members of the Lothians Radio Society, whose club call is GM3HAM. And please at home keep your questions and comments coming for all of the team. So first up, we'll meet Secretary of the Society, Andy Sinclair, MM0FMF. Hello, Andy.
Hi, and hello everyone. My name's Andy, MM0FMF. I've been licensed 34 years this summer. It doesn't seem that long, but I spent the first 8 years down in England, and since 2000 up in Scotland. And I've been contesting most of that time, originally with my old club down in the UK, down in England, and after a short break whilst having moved house and getting things sorted with the Lothians Radio Society, who I like to think were a big, small contesting group. I'll introduce my fellow contesters tonight from the group. We've got John, GM4JRT.
Good evening, everyone. Just a quick background about me. I was first licensed in September 2020 when I had extra time because of all the lockdowns, and found myself a bit of loose end and stumbled across amateur radio. I then joined the Lothians Radio Society for their VHF Field Day in July 2021, and haven't looked back really. And yeah, just sort of jumping in and really enjoying the hobby and contesting.
Thanks, John. What I find sort of interesting is John is exactly half my age, and I was his age when I first got interested in radio and contesting. So I see a parallel, and hopefully he'll still be taking part in 32 years' time. But so that's John, and also we've got Brian, GM8BJF. and Brian got licensed in, I think, 68. So he's been licensed for quite a while, but he's been contesting longer than that, haven't you, Brian? You're on mute, Brian.
I think, Brian, you need to unmute if you can, please. Spacebar sometimes works. I'll tell you what, Andy, maybe we'll come back to you and we'll come and see Brian later.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah, that's no problem. A small technical problem there for Brian, but somewhat unusual because just last week, his fully rebuilt GB3 EDN beacon for 23/7s went back on the air. Brian's been the beacon keeper on that for a long, long time. But it had to change site, so it's just been restored and rebuilt and reinvigorated. So might be worth listening out for. It's on the internet how to what frequency it's on and which directions it's pointing. So what we've got tonight is we've got 4 short videos. 2 of them are from VHF Field Day 2023, and 2 are first of all, the one of them is from Super 8 film that was shot in 1966 for VHF Field Day, and the other is some of the people who are still active and still members of the Lothians Society, their memories of what it was like and how things have changed. And I see Brian's unmuted. Brian, good evening.
Good evening. Sorry about that. Yes, I initially sat my RAE in 1965 and eventually got a license in 1968 at a time when the Class B licenses were allowed on to 2 meters. And very early on, well, even before I had a license, we were out doing some contests because some of my co-members from the Lothians Radio Society were interested in contests, and we used to go up the Pentland Hills just south of Edinburgh and did a number of VHF contests. They were all 2-meter contests with relatively simple equipment, usually valve equipment, and everything was crystal controlled, no VFOs, and we had to tune around to listen for replies. So it was somewhat different to what the way we operate these days. But it was all good fun and getting out in the fresh air and that sort of thing. So it was all very enjoyable. I was always quite keen on hill walking, so that blended quite well with a portable contest operation, especially if we were on top of a hill and it got us out in the fresh air. The gear was quite simple. We ran about 10 watts, running from batteries with simple aerials, and it was before 2 meters became sort of channelized and sort of organized, and it was all AM. It was quite unusual to find other modes. Occasionally you would hear SSB, but then eventually FM began to appear. But we also used transistor converters for the receivers, and we were quite advanced. We had an all-transistor receiver. It was an EC10 that we used. But we carried on since then, and things have evolved. But it's still good fun, and the basic ethos is to get outside and have some fresh air.
Right, thank you, Brian. So we've got the video split up, and one of the things about our group is for Field Day, we run 3 stations, 6 and 4 meters, 2 meters, and then a UHF one, either 70 or 23. and all of the stations basically have someone who's in charge of that setup to make sure the right equipment is brought there. So they'll be in charge of making sure that they've got a mast, rotator, antenna, radio, and all the other requirements. Generator is a sort of a group provided service. And we've been building up the equipment over many years. There is quite a lot of it, but it wasn't all bought in one go. It's like years and years and years of, that'll be useful, and it gets stuck in the garage. We're very lucky. We've been using this site for about 20 years now, and we've built up an excellent relationship with the farmer who owns it. It's a working farm, and when we're not contesting, there's possibly sheep or cattle in the field, but it's now got to a matter of a quick phone call to the farmer and say, we're going to come down for, I think the next one we're doing is the May VHF. We'll be down in May, and he'll get the whatever's in the field will be removed 2 weeks before, which means we've got the field to use. And the advantage is there is a road right to where we're going to operate from, which makes things a lot easier than when Brian first started and equipment was manhandled up the hills. Anyway, let's go to the first video, and you can see what we get up to.
I've been partaking in field day since the early 90s, and it's evolved into 3 big stations and full catering. Just arrived here on the Friday night, and the aim is to get some tents up and start assembling the masts, and then we'll be heading off to the Masonic Arms in Gatehouse of Fleet for a team meal.
We're down at Gatehouse of Fleet for the VHF Field Day 2023. We try and do a number of VHF and UHF contests each year. VHF Field Day, and this year we'll be doing 6 meters, 4 meters, 2 meters and 70 SEMs. I'm standing up here where we camp for the weekend. Pan round, you can see that we're on top of a relatively wild bit of southwest Scotland. We're about 190 metres above sea level here. The great thing about this site is the ground slopes away from here down to the sea, which gives a fair amount of antenna gain. What we can see behind me are the contest stations. There are 3 green tents, and those are the tents that everyone is going to be operating from. And there's one other tent which is the catering tent. So first on the right, we've got the 2 meter station. All of these are in the restricted section, so the antenna height has been measured and is a maximum of 10 meters. So all of these are the limit for the contest rules. Coming round, the tent in the middle is the UHF tent. And again, we've got a 10 meter mast. I think it might be a bit smaller this year because we broke a piece. And the 77 Yagi is on there. The 2 meter Yagi is, I think, a 19 Ellie, and the 77 Yagi is a 33 element. And then further round, awaiting to go up, is the 6 and 4 meter station. We've got a homebrew 9 element on 6 meters and 11 element Yagi for 4 meters. So that's a brief rundown of the stations. As I said, we're in the restricted section, so they're all running 100 watts.
Mike 3 Hotel Alpha Mike Portable. News. Contest to start. VHF Portable. Just standing by. CQ Contest. George Mike 3 Hotel Alpha Mike Portable.
CQ Contest. George Mike 3 Hotel Alpha Mike Portable.
This is the 2 metre contest station. Danny's operating the radio. I'm doing the logging at the moment. And to make life easier, we now use computer aided logging rather than writing things down on paper, though we still do some of that. Laptop, this is just an old laptop that's running a specific contest scoring program called Minos. This is preferred for use in contests in the UK, RSGB VHF Contests. It's the preferred program. Oh, hang on.
Yeah, Golf 3 Tango Zulu Oscar. Very good afternoon, thank you for the call today.
Right, so there we go. That was set up and the start of 2 metre operations. One of the things we try to do is to keep our site very tidy. And it didn't look that tidy on that video walking into the tent, but things were still being sorted. We have a good reason for that. One of our keen members is Terry, GM3WUX, who's completely blind. Once we've told him where the where the tents are and where the guy wires are and where everything is located, he's able to wander around the site without any help whatsoever. But we can only achieve that by keeping it tidy and putting everything in a known position. But it's just good practice anyway when you consider that there are 10-metre masts and there's a lot of weight at the top of those poles. There's guy wires and there's LDF 450 feeders all over the ground. Anyway, over to John, who's going to talk a bit more about some of the site specifics.
So one of the things that we do is we line the guy wires up on the compass points, so north, south, east, west, and if we get any slippage in the rotator or any of the couplers on the masts, it means that if the controller doesn't match up correctly with the position of the antennas, it's very easy to spot that. Because we have had situations where masts have started twisting and we're not really sure why we're not getting the contacts, or we're not peaking the signal where we think they are with their grid locator. So that's a very easy way to troubleshoot that. And in addition to keeping the site nice and clear for Terry, it's always good just to have things in boxes and labelled and knowing where everything is, because if you start having a big mess that goes in the back of the car, then you don't know what you've got and you don't know what you're going to take away with you as well. And because we use a shared access field, it's very important that we leave the site as it was when we arrived. So there's not lots of cable ties and electrical tape lying on the ground for the cows to chew and cause problems, because I think we'd lose access very quickly if we did that. Another important thing, obviously, is to power the station. And we use an old builder's generator with a long run fuel tank to make sure that it can be left unattended for long periods of time. And I think it's a fairly beefy one at about 4.5 kilowatts. So we can run kettles and hot plates and microwaves at the same time that we're running the actual station equipment. And that's it's all very good for keeping people fed and making sure that everyone's got enough coffee and tea to keep them warm and going. And it's fantastic setting it all up on the field day, and I'm sure everyone else has great memories and thoughts about VHF Field Day. So I'll pass it back to you, Andy, and I'll let you carry on.
Right, thanks, John. Yep, it's very easy to forget about the generator and then just stick it in a shed somewhere, and then when you come to use it on the first contest of the year and find it doesn't start. So we do try and make sure that the generators have been tested and run for half an hour before they're brought out of hibernation. And we have had that where somebody had left fuel in the tank, and there was a variety of sort of sediment and gunge blocking the jets in the carburettor. Field stripping the carburettor in a wet and windy field is not fun, but we got it going. And I think we did quite well in that contest after a sort of a difficult start. Right, thank you for that, John. And we'll have a look at a bit more of what goes on our 2023 VHF Field Day.
Yeah, Roger, QSL 59006, Italy Oscar 83 November Alpha. QSL?
Yes, QSL 073.
Yeah, thank you for the call.
So that station was down somewhere near Ipswich, about 450 kilometres away. So not bad for 2 metres. Okay, so logging's done primarily on the laptop, paper check log. And then over here we've got the station. To make life easier, if you look down here, we use a foot switch for keying the radio, and that leaves both hands free with a headset, with a boom mic. You've got both hands free, and Dan here is doing a check log in paper. We've got a rotator here, pointing southeast at the moment, which for us is where the vast majority of stations are. Next to that, there is a multi-mode VHF UHF radio with a homebrewed voice keyer on the side, which makes life a lot easier. There's a small Morse paddle on the top, and in the far corner a big power supply which has got lots of capacity, so it can keep the voltage constant when we're running a high current load from the transceiver. The radio with the homebrew voice keyer, which saves your voice, and the rotator. So that's all there is really.
As of now, we're in the tent, which is using the shortest wavelength or highest frequency, and that has the aerial with the shortest elements. Over the years, our techniques have got more and more sophisticated. We're still contacting via voice. We sometimes use Morse code. Two reasons for the using of computers. We can look at them and see exactly where people are, and therefore we know which way to point our aerials. And the other thing that's happening on one of the computers here is we're looking at aircraft, because one of the ways we can communicate is bounce our signals off aircraft rather like radar, and for a minute or so the signals will come out quite loud and we can communicate that way.
X3 Hotel Alpha Mike Portable, Sierra November 1 India, Sugar Norway 1 Italy, over.
Yeah, Sugar Norway 1 Italy, thanks for the call. You're 59019, Italy Ocean 74 Whiskey Victor, IO 74 Whiskey Victoria, go ahead.
Roger, Roger, good afternoon, 59009, 009, Juliet Oscar 84 Charlie Echo, QSL.
Yeah, Roger, thanks for the call, very pleased to work you. QRZ Golf Mike 3 Hotel, Alpha Mike Portable.
This is called a field day. It is a competition. We actually do, by entering into a restricted category, we do pretty well from here. We have won the category several times, and we've come runners-up many times. It's an exercise for the whole of our amateur radio club to come and join in. Would recommend it to anybody who's interested in technology practically as well as operating.
Right, so you can see that was 2023, and some of the things we got up to on that one. As I said at the start, Brian has been contesting for a long time. So what we have is some old Super 8 film that was shot in 1966 that's been converted to video that shows contesting how it was in the dim and distant past. And it's quite interesting to see how things have changed. We were in the restricted section on VHF Field Day, which is a 100 watt limit on 2 meters and 70. I'm not sure what the power limit is on 4 and 6. I think it's still 100 watts. We do some contests in the open section where the limit used to be 400 watts, and on 2 meters it'll be a kilowatt now. And over the years I've been contesting, I've seen quite a big change. When I first got interested, if you wanted high power, then it was going to be valved, typically a Weasel, 2 4CX 250s, or maybe if you had real money, a Henry and a pair of 8874s, and all those amplifiers used to have blowers that sounded like Concorde taking off. And for the open sections now, we have a few LDMOS amps, and they have very quiet fans, and it's very strange to go in a contesting tent in the open section and be actually able to hear what's going on, because there isn't a blower roaring away. Anyway, what we're going to see next, or Brian's going to give us a quick introduction to how he's seen things change, and then when he's finished, we've got 1966 VHF Field Day, some old film that we've restored. Brian, over to you.
Yes, thank you, Andrew. Yes, it all has changed quite a lot over the years, and when I started off, the gear was quite simple and relatively light, and certainly now the logistics for organising field day are much more complicated, I think, if we're going to be reasonably competitive. It's one of the issues that our group has had to consider, is just the amount of equipment we can take in view of the number of us involved. We have had some discussion, and I wouldn't say disagreements, but there's been some reasonably intense discussion amongst the group of us about which sections of the contest we should go into. And we feel that it is probably just realistic to do the restricted section, given the number of us and the amount of transport we have between us. Because the site we go to, we're based in Edinburgh, and the site in the south of Scotland is about 90 miles drive for most of us. And just shifting all the equipment down there and getting it set up and working is a problem if we take too much equipment. So the restricted section suits us quite well for that. But it has that works quite well for us. So, back to you, Andy.
Yep. Okay. Thanks, Brian. So anyway, you can see how in this next section how a very much younger Brian and a few others from the society did field day in 1966.
Hello, I'm Brian Flynn, GM8BJF. I've been out on many field days with the Lothians Radio Society over the years.
I'm Alan Masson, GM3PSP. I was first licensed in 1962. I was a member of the radio club at George Watson's Boys' College in those days, and I joined the Lothians Radio Society before I got licensed. I know that the Lothians took part in HF field days well before 1966, and there are still photographs, some very good ones, of a field day in 1955 at Lone Head.
I first became aware of field day type activities when I was at school, because I was a member of the radio club at George Watson's, and in about my second or third year in the senior school, the Lothians Radio Society actually ran HF field day on the playing field.
The playing fields at George Watson's were sort of ideal for pitching tents and things like that.
Yes, I do remember members of the Lothians being present there. Not sure if I was a member of the Lothians at that stage. I may have been, because I joined about that sort of time.
47, something like that?
47, 48, I believe.
Yeah, so I'm guessing that they may have taken part in field days from the early 1950s onwards.
Well, certainly photographs of field day-like activities are seen from the early 50s, judging by the people involved.
Well, GM5HL, GM5 Harry Lauder, or Hugh Lawson, lived out at Lone Head and had made an arrangement with a local farmer for us to use a field there, provided we presented a large box of chocolates to the farmer's wife.
Makes a change from bottles of whiskey.
Before I got licensed, in fact, and did quite a number of HF field days. I think it was my idea that we would try some VHF field days, and having done some hill walking, I thought West Kip would be rather a good site with a good takeoff in all directions.
Yes, things were quite different then, because I think there was, my recollection is that there was a rule certainly for HF field that you had to run off batteries in the RSGB rules. The generators were slightly frowned upon, I remember.
West Kip is a hill something like 1,800 feet high, and it's a lot higher than the road nearby, but there is a trail that goes up through a farm up to a sort of col on the Pentland Hills, and then you have to walk up, struggle up, probably another 500 feet, maybe more, with all your equipment, including these very heavy batteries, the receiver, the transverter, the aerials, tents, food, etc.
Beer?
Oh, of course, beer, yes, sorry, silly of me forgetting. In terms of technology, these were relatively early days, certainly compared with today. The equipment consisted of an Eddystone EC10, one of the first transistorized shortwave receivers that they made. There had always been valves before that, so it was a bit smaller than the older receivers. On the transmitter side, I'm struggling to remember exactly what we had. Certainly there was a 2-meter transverter. I can't remember what the basic transmitter was.
I watched you build that transmitter. I took an interest in it because after you left, I built my own version of that for our continuing the portable activities, and it used a QQVO310 in the PA, which ran about 10 watts.
The aerial was an 8-element J-beam Yagi.
None of this rotator caper that we have now. We leaned out the tent and grabbed the pole and turned it by hand. Referred to as the Armstrong method. They were quite solidly made aerials. I think I still have one.
Need to recognise, though, that even in 1966, running AM was starting to become a bit old-fashioned, and we would hear quite a number of SSB stations in the contest, and typically they were doing rather better than us. Yeah. We were running an AM transmitter which was crystal controlled, and the standard thing was we would be calling CQ on that crystal frequency, and then we would say, I'm tuning the band for replies.
The gear was all relatively simple. You could just walk up to it and use it. Didn't have to go on a course to operate the transceiver, just is more or less the case nowadays. Sitting eating cold baked beans out the tin with a fork, or a penknife or something that we probably used to open the tin. It was somewhat primitive, but we survived.
I don't think we had any hope of actually winning. It was mainly just to enjoy ourselves.
Yes, it was all fairly relaxed from that point of view. It wasn't as... I don't remember them being really as competitive.
Right, so that was back in 1966, and it's quite interesting to contrast crystal control 10 watt AM transmitter with some of the equipment we use now. 2 meters on VHF Field Day last, we used an IC 9700, which is really quite nice, and we've used its predecessor, was that an IC 9910, and before that FT736s. But the best of the 2 meter stations we have is an Elecraft K3 with a Kuhn transverter. It's the 9700s are good, but the Kuhn and the K3 is orders of magnitude better, and so it should be, because it's awfully expensive. But unlike the FT736, which is not bad, they're quite noisy and tiring to listen to for long periods, certainly with headphones on. Whereas the Kuhn is very, very relaxing to use. So that's like sort of a stunning amount of change in the technology. And as you can see, Brian has not changed that much. Possibly a little greyer and slightly less hairy, but most of us are like that nowadays. And you know, even in my time, in 30 odd years, I've seen valved PAs disappear. We have a number of valved amplifiers amongst members of the group, and I can't remember. I think it must be 2 or 3 years before COVID, in one of the open sections, when we last had a valved PA in use, because modern LD-MOS amps are very, very simple to set up and use, and they just keep working, and there's no roar from them. So I'm not sure. Brian, have you got anything else you want to say about the differences between then and now?
Yes. So I think as technology has moved on, we have tried to move with it. Whether we were leading it or behind it, I don't know, but we have moved on, and I think that's in the nature of the hobby, that we have to move with the times, and we've done that, I think, reasonably effectively, I think.
And from John's point of view, as someone who's reasonably new to radio and contesting, I think what must have got him at first was that there is quite a lot of equipment that gets taken down to the contest site. And what always gets me is that it seems to take forever to set the stations up and get ready, but we can get 3 complete stations down, dismantled, packed away in about 2 hours. But anyway, over to John for his thoughts about what he's been sort of seeing over the past couple of years.
Yeah, I think the big thing for me with the contest setups and field day in particular is the camaraderie and people working together to get it all done. Because it's one thing sitting at home and using your radio yourself, particularly on VHF. There's not much activity outside of contests, apart from local nets or a couple of guys chatting away to themselves. But certainly when you go down and you start doing contests, that really opens it up, and it shows you just what you can achieve on VHF and UHF, and even up into the microwaves, just the distances that you can get with using aircraft scatter, etc. But the social aspect of it, I think, for me is the real kicker, because once you've put the mic off and you're done for the day and you go for a cold brew afterwards, that's really the highlight for me. And yes, and getting stuff down. I mean, it's a monumental effort. We've got 4 or 5 bootloads of kit with tents and everything else to get it all up, but it's all good fun, and I think everybody enjoys it. I don't think anyone comes away from it thinking, "Oh, that was a slog. I won't be doing that again." But yes, it's been very, very enjoyable the last few years I've done it, and I look forward to doing it more in the future.
Thanks, John. Right, so we've got one final video to show you, and then a few more words wrapping up, and then we'll be ready for any questions. So, final bit of video, which is only a short piece.
Yes, I mean, the early days, we didn't have the logistics issue. You could probably carry the whole station yourself, just about. And also, all this operator comfort stuff wasn't highly thought of. Operating positions and swivel chairs. And
we were just sitting on the ground.
Yeah, we were either lying or sitting on the ground, getting damp and cold.
57 years later, look back on it with a lot of pleasure. It was great, in its simple way in those days.
Yes, it was good fun, and I don't remember it being as sort of pressurised as they are now, the contests.
Right. Okay. Thank you, John and Brian. And as John said, part of what's good fun about this is I have a nice house, but a postage stamp garden, so I can't set up antennas quite as big as those, and operate a big, half decent VHF station from home. So it gives me a chance to operate a bigger station. Even in the restricted section, only running 100 watts, having I think it's a 17 or 19 element Yagi. It's 5 wavelengths long, so it's 10 meters long. Makes a difference. And when there's other stations on, a lot of other contest stations, it's not unusual for our operating position in near Gatehouse of Fleet, which is southwest Scotland, across the water from the Northern Lakes. If you don't know where Gatehouse is, we'll regularly work a fair way into Belgium, Holland, and France on 2 meters, and also on 77s. I mean, of course, it does depend on conditions. So it does make a difference, and the weather can be a killer. We have done one. I think it was a May contest when we were in fog and rain for the entire 24-hour period. And it was raining that much. I slept in the car rather than setting up the tent because it would take so long to dry it. And that was a bit miserable, but it was still good fun. And the other thing that we have, which makes it easy for us, is one of the group, Colin, GM4 HWO, he's really into catering and cooking and preparing food. So we have bacon rolls and burgers, of course. But we do have tea, real coffee, not just instant coffee, and a big barbecue on the Saturday night on the 24-hour ones. And Colin goes to town on that. And we're not heathen barbarians. We don't just eat pig and bacon and burgers, but we do have vegetables and salads and dessert. The latest style is making pancakes with various dressings, often involving exotic rums and things. So yeah, it's and that as they say, an army marches on the stomach, and having someone prepare the food for you is great. I can remember we were doing one early morning session, and conditions just picked up a bit, and I think I had an hour on the mic at about 8:30 in the morning, and it was just station after station after station. So after an hour, I'd worked 40 or 50 stations, and I was like sort of thinking, well, I really could do with something to eat. And at this point, a fresh mug of tea and a couple of bacon rolls appeared, which made me operate a lot more vigor, as I wasn't quite so hungry. So that is very important, that there is decent food and non-stop tea and coffee. And we're not really barbarians at all. There might be quite a lot of men with beards in a field, but we are quite civilized enough to have a G&T or two or three even as an aperitif before our evening barbecue. And the best is when it's a sunny evening in July, and we can relax a little with some nice food and a drink, and hear someone who's still trying to work more contacts on 70 SEMs in the distance. So anyway, that's what we do. That's what we get up to. And there's a group shot of us here. That was the 2023 team. And you can see just 2 of, I think, the 9 or 10 vehicles we had down there. So there you go. That's the regular crew. There are 1 or 2 others who drop in and out as and when the feeling fits. Right. So that's the Lothians and us doing some VHF contests.
Thank you very much to you, Andy, and to everybody for their presentations this evening. I wish I couldn't keep mentioning food because I haven't had my evening meal yet. Anyway, it's a chance for you to ask questions if you haven't already done so, and make comments as well. Do it on BATC chat or YouTube chat, and we'll read them to you. We've got a couple of questions for you. So please don't forget your first name and your call sign as well if you have one. So let's hopefully look forward to hearing from your questions. And I'm going to read the first one to you now, which comes from, I had it a moment ago, EI2IP, Robbie. Looking to get active on 23 SEMs from IO52. Richard has 4 antennas on his mast. For us with small setups, is there any compromise in having so many antennas on one mast?
I'm going to defer to Brian, as he's better at that stuff than I am. So Brian, what's your view on stacking be dissimilar bands, so multiple bands on the same pole?
Yes, that can be a problem. It depends really how far they all are apart. And in an ideal situation, you'd have them spaced a number of wavelengths apart. The wavelength corresponding to the lowest frequency you're using, but I appreciate that's not possible always, and it has to be a compromise in that situation. On the higher bands, it's good. You can get them in quite close together, but I don't think that's possible on the lower bands. But you just got to do the best you can, and in the situation you're in, I think.
Richard, I wonder if you've got any views on that from the point of view of the VHF Contest Committee.
Yeah, well, I mean, the question is, do you want to get on the band? And if you do, then you've got to kind of put up with the compromise of the aerials. Now, I mean, my back garden is pretty small. I've only got a shortish sort of stub mast, so yes, it would be excellent to try and space them out a bit, because particularly on 2 and 70, I've noticed that the 23 SEMs isn't so bad because it's on the top and it's kind of out of the way, but the 6 and 4 dual bander, which since they seem to become a bit of the flavour of the month on those 2 bands, that's really helped me out. But even still, the 2 meters and 70 SEMs beams, you can tell the pattern does get a bit destroyed by the 6 and 4 meter beam underneath. It kind of, I think they seem to think it's kind of earth rather than anything else. So the pattern does actually, you can tell it does degrade. But it's a question of whether you want to get on the band or not. And if you want to get on, stick them up there and see what happens, and then play around with them. One thing I have thought about is kind of doing a cross piece side by side with the 2 and 70 rather than the 23 and 70, and then having the 2 meters on the top. So you're looking at getting trying to get half a wavelength between each one, but it's hard going.
Okay, thanks very much. Got a question now from Steve M1SDH. Says, very interesting and great videos. Do you make many contacts with aircraft scatter? Who'd like to take that?
I think that's one for Brian, because Brian tends to concentrate on 70 and 23.
Yes, we do make a number of contacts on aircraft scatter, but that involves having quite a lot of computer infrastructure on site to achieve these contacts. But I would say on 70 we probably make about maybe a quarter of our contacts via aircraft scatter. Is an important aspect of the competition for us, because it gets these contacts tend to be longer distance contacts, and that's important with the scoring system. So yes, I think if you're going to be competitive, you need to have the capability to do aircraft scatter, and that involves a lot of computer clobber, shall we say, for the event. I hope that answers your question.
I know we've had we have a friend who we like to work on 2 meters, and he lives up Lothians. And for those of you who don't know where Scotland is, that's nearly in Iceland. It's right up on the northwest coast, and it's also a bit hilly between him and us. Scotland's quite hilly in general, and there's an awful lot between where we are in the Gatehouse of Fleet for contesting and Lothians. So we have used aircraft scatter on 2 meters. One of the issues is are there suitable aircraft? And during COVID, if you looked at the aircraft scatter programs, what was amazing was there were no planes in the sky. And now you can see they're all back. But to do aircraft scatter when we're contesting, we already have one laptop to do the logging on, and then you'll need another one. It's not worth trying to run the scatter program and the logging at the same time. You're just switching backwards and forwards and are going to make a problem. So you need another laptop for aircraft scatter, and so there may well be for 3 stations 6, 8, 9 laptops in use, just to make life easier rather than flicking between them. And also we're all getting a bit older, John accepted, so quite often we also have external monitors now, so we can see the damn screens on the laptops.
Okay.
I think the word scatter it opens up a whole can of worms in a way, because I mean I use I'm pretty well sighted here to the from north round to west, but in north to the northwest direction to GI, I get much better reflections off Snowdon and the Pennines when I'm trying to work, say, GD80XI or any of the GI stations. So you have to consider the possibilities of, rather than if you're getting a poor signal directly, just have a look at what way you can actually perhaps get a scattered signal off, because that it can really reap rewards that.
Yeah, I mean, I've done, when we've done microwave contests, we can see the Isle of Man. It's about 30 miles away from our contest site. And as the day goes on, it comes in and out of the mist. So it's quite easy to see. And there are a few contest groups on the Isle of Man. And on microwaves, we've worked the guys towards the south. They can't see us because Snaefell's in the way. So we worked them many times on 13 SEMs by using the Mountain Black Coombe, which is in the southwest of the Lake District, as a reflector. And I think I think we might have used that on 3 SEMs as well, but certainly 13.
Yes, we have used it on 3 SEM.
Yeah, so we've used that. I mean, there's a reason why they put radar on 3 SEMs and 13 SEMs, because it bounces off things, and it's very good on the microwave bands to use obstacles to get round other obstacles.
Exactly.
Okay, thank you very much. And Steve, M1SDH, who asked that question, says, thank you. Wow, a quarter of the contacts is a lot more than he thought, so maybe he'll be giving that a go as well. Next question comes from James, GM4WZP. It says, thanks for sharing. How do 3 stations all work together? Are they connected in any way, or maybe only in an emergency? Who'd like to take that?
I think we use ShouterNet, or someone runs over to the other thing and says, yeah, somebody says wants to know what frequency you're running on 70. So we do try and make a note of where we are, what our working frequencies are when we're calling CQ, and in that way we can say, you know, have you got 70? Have you got 6 meters? We're on those bands on these frequencies. So that's one thing. But most of the time they they just sort of operate, and it's only when I mean, people ask for can we try them on 70, and we'll think that's going to be dodgy. So we'll schedule that in, and there are other people who we know we can work on 70, for example, that we'll be keen to get them worked while the conditions are as they are. During a 24-hour period, the conditions can change quite a bit as well. So it's always a case of trying to work whatever you can when you can hear it. But apart from that, they sort of run independently. And the other signaling system we have is Colin, who likes to send Morse by powering the kettle up and down and causing the generator tone to change. The generator will hunt and labour as the kettle comes on, and that's often used as a signal that there's there might be food or something.
That sounds good. You mentioned that F word again, didn't you? Food. But you mentioned fun a lot as well, all of you, by the way. I meant to mention that earlier because it's clearly lots of fun for you. James has actually come back with another question. It seems a bit windy in the video that you showed. Is it always windy? I'm going to bring John in now. Is it always windy like it looked there, John?
Not always. I would say more often than not, yes, it is, because it's quite an exposed piece of ground that we work from. But there has been good, strong sun as well, and sunburn, because people forget and neglect to put on sun cream. Because you think, oh, you're working in Scotland and you couldn't possibly get sunburnt out there. But particularly when you're setting up and taking down, maybe not so much taking down, but definitely setting up, you can be out for a good few hours, getting all the masts up and all the antennas set up and the tents and everything, and running backwards and forwards, getting stuff out of cars and putting it all together, running coax, etc., etc. But with the wind, once you're in the tent, you don't really notice it, to be honest. And it's more just the generator humming in the background, even though it's probably a good 20 meters away. You can still hear it whirring away. And as Andy says, Colin likes to fiddle with the kettle and act like he's a DJ, making the revs go up and down.
Wow, that does sound fascinating to hear that. That's a great way to signal between all of you. It's brilliant. Okay,
David, I've got a funny COVID anecdote, if you don't mind. We during our deliberations about what to do, the discussions came up as you can imagine, if you picture the scene, there's 2 guys in a car trying to CQ, and all the car was like steaming up inside, and all you could see was like condensation and stuff, and you think, well, that must be the perfect sort of breeding ground for COVID. And that was one of the things that we discussed at length, the actual distance between people, talking into microphones, swapping the microphone over to somebody else, and all that sort of thing. So we honestly spent hours on that. I mean, not doctors, but it was a real topic of conversation when the COVID was running.
Yeah, I bet it was. Those are sad times, but But it seems good that this is at least something that you could all do safely outside. It was one of the wonderful things we could all do and see each other.
Absolutely.
In those days. Now I've got still staying with you, Richard, really, because I've got a question here about the rules, and this is from Mike G4CDF, who says, it seems to me that the rules for VHF NFD are much more complicated than other contests. Why?
I think because there are so many different types of station. There are so many different sections. You've got 6 hours open, you've got 6 hours fixed. It's the actual number of. Take the last contest this weekend, for instance. We've got the single operator fixed. We've got the 6 hour open, and what we've tried to do is to pull or try and satisfy everybody who could possibly do a contest. Now, the 6 hour section, for instance, suits people who haven't got a lot of time to do a 24-hour contest. And I mean, I know I haven't, and a lot of people haven't. So we've modified those to say you can have a break for an hour and then come back on for another section, as long as you don't go over your 6 hours. If you do, then you'd be in the full section. So there are so many different bands to cater for, and we tried to make sure that the equipment that's available is suited to a particular section. Now that kind of seems a bit daft, but the more you go up in frequency, and I think probably the IC 9700, when that came on the market, it kind of defines what people can, what bands people can use and the power that they can use. So that's the reason behind it. It's quite throughout the year. It's quite a feat actually pulling all that together.
Okay, thanks. So I'm going to leap to a question that asked very recently, but it's very much linked to what you've said. Michael Naylor asks, why are only 4 stations counted on VHF NFD, i.e. one band is always sacrificed?
I think that's what we're trying to do is to make it accessible to as many people as possible, because I mean, gone are the days in many cases where a group can put on every single band. That could be a breaker between actually going out at all, or perhaps doing floor bands on a contest like Field Day, because you've got to look and you think, well, am I going to be competitive? Are we going to do this, that, and the other? But you tend to find that a lot of the groups tend to do the same bands each time. There might be a bit of an experiment between 70 and 23, but to actually get on them all is for a lot of groups is pretty difficult unless you're in the fully open, unrestricted section. So we just try and make it as fair and accessible to everybody, really.
If you put that picture up of our sort of group at the end, you can see all those people and you can count them, and that's really enough people to run 3 stations. There's enough people there to do 4 and 6 on the Saturday and the Sunday, or 6 and 4 Saturday and Sunday. 2 meters, which is where, unless there are massive sporadic e-openings, we're going to work more on 2 than on 4 and 6. And 77s. And if we were to do 23 again in the restricted section, we'd have a problem. We'd have to run the 77s antenna and 23 on the same mast, and then the 77s antenna would be a meter lower, which is a significant change in its height, and that's going to affect how well things work on 70. Plus more equipment. We've got a rig, a rotator, a memory keyer, laptops, computers for all these things, and then you add in a 5th band. We're a big small station in the restricted section, and I don't think we could run 5 bands I don't think we could run 5 bands well. It would be that 20 and 73 would be the same station, and there'd be a 9700, and it would be we'd be calling on 70 and saying, have you got 23, and then flicking to a working frequency. So yeah, it's hard work. There aren't enough people in our group to make that viable. It's one of the reasons why when we do 3 stations, we run in the restricted section, not the open. Because if you're going to run in the open section where you've got a big amp, it's a waste of time unless you've got a lot of antennas. So all of a sudden, we're going to need 2 or 4 of those antennas for 2 meters. And I think they're $800 each now. So the open section, to be competitive from where we are in Scotland, is probably going to be 5-8 times the cost of equipment. And the one thing we haven't got is manpower to do it. And if you're going to do a big station, you want to be on all 24 hours or a lot longer. And it's all, it's ever decreasing circles. The more you do, the more it costs, the more. And it stops, from our point of view, it stops being fun when you have to put so much effort in because you've taken so much kit down. So that's a reason why we're quite happy it's 4.
Okay, if you've got a different opinion at home, then do put it onto the chat and we'll read it to the group. A question now from Terry, G3VFC. Do you routinely use bandpass filters, or do modern receivers not suffer from desensing between bands? Who'd like to take this?
The last time I had a filter on contesting was when I was contesting down in England, when we used to go to Wales to a BBC transmitter site, and a harmonic of Radio 3 from the BBC transmitter, which was 20 odd kilowatts of RF before the antenna gain, used to break through the preamp on 77s and desense it. So we just had a quarter wave stub. But when we're running multiple stations, we're only running 100 watts. So it's not a problem for us. I would imagine if you're in the big section and you're running big watts, it could be more of a problem, but not for us. I'm not sure if we've had filters in the past, Brian, from maybe 20 odd years ago.
No, I mean, some years in the past, we were in the open section and we ran higher powers, but we never used filters then. We never had the need of them. Sometimes there were breakthrough issues, and sometimes we would have harmonics from 70 centimeters, from 2 meters appearing on 70 centimeters, or even on 23 sems when we were operating on that. But we usually managed to work around it by just avoiding the frequencies involved. But no, we haven't used special extra bandpass filters routinely.
Okay, so I guess that does mean, as Terry suggested, that modern rigs like the 9700 and things can cope with things much better in regards to desensing when you've got close antennas and everything. Yeah. Okay, thank you for that. ADG6AD asks, does all modes include data modes in the VHF NFD rules? One for Richard, I think.
Data is a bit of a difficult question. You can, as it stands, you can actually run, whether you consider it a data mode or not, you can do meteor scatter, I believe, with some of the software that's in the WSJT and or MSHB package. Now, actually, what you call true data modes, PSK31 or something like that, at the moment, no.
Okay. I'm not saying we try to make VHF NFD a haven for SSB and CW and stuff, but there is, it's a different kettle of fish, the data modes. Any thoughts maybe then from the Lothians on whether it's something they should consider. Have you ever felt that SSB, for example, doesn't cut it and you'd like to be able to use data? One of you like to take that from Lothians?
I think we concentrate on doing SSB mostly voice. I have discussed and sort of raised if we do data modes, and it's been met with indifference. I think people really like to speak to one another and engage that way. And actually, you find with VHF contests that there's a lot more chatter between the contacts, whereas with HF contests, it's very much kind of, 5-9 on you go, 5-9 on you go, bang, 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 bang. You get through it. If you're not doing 1,000 contacts in your contest period, then you're not doing it right. Whereas on VHF Field Day, it's very much kind of like, oh, how's the weather there? How are you guys getting on? We've got X number of contacts so far. Yep. That's all good. And then you sort of say, we're working these other bands, and can you hear us on this? Can you hear us on that? And so it's we have discussed it, but I don't think we'd really want to jump into it because it sort of loses that personal touch.
That's interesting what you just said there, John, about, because I was going to ask, one of my questions was, how you haven't talked tonight actually about HF contests and what would be the difference between them, and you've just clearly identified one of them. As you say, HF contests certainly seem to be real pressure on getting as many contacts as possible, so there's no time to chat or anything between. You really do have time, do you, to have a bit of a conversation between these modes?
Yeah, definitely it is, and it's sometimes you'll get somebody saying, "Oh, can you hear my friend down the road? He's only got a white stick, and he really wants to work you because you're a Scottish station, and because we've got the bigger aerial at our site, we can do the heavy lifting on the receive side. So even if they're just on low power and they're maybe on a compromised aerial, or they've got the cross polarization issue, sometimes we can pick them out, and they're quite happy just to give us a locator, give us a serial 001, and that's it. That's the only contact they make in the contest, and you just have a chat backwards and forwards and say, But as I say, with HF contesting, it's a completely different kettle of fish. Yes, you're still running the contest, and yes, you're still trying to get the points and ultimately win, because at the end of the day, it is a contest and you are being competitive. But with the VHF Field Day in particular, you can really slow it down, and you get to know who runs the stations, and you get to know the call signs, and the same sort of people will put on the stations. And as Richard was saying, there's more sweepers now, so there's more people who aren't going out and about, and they're more picking up. But certainly the stations that go and put on a show, you'll get to know the call signs, and you'll get to know roughly where they are and who's operating. So I mean, some of the guys in the Lothians are on first name terms with the guys, and they just go, "Oh, that's so and so." So yeah, it's the social aspect of it is not just on site, but it's also the contest as a whole as well.
I mean, I very rarely go on HF, but when I listen to some of the contests on HF, I mean, they can be pretty brutal. The people that you've possibly known for 30, 40 years, and you say, "Oh, hello, how are you doing?" Blah. They don't want to know. It's bang, 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 and the VHF side of things has always been a bit different. I mean, I'll chat to anybody anytime, and last weekend was a classic example.
Yeah, it's a lot more friendly, more gentlemanly, if I can use that word still, on 4 meters. That's a band where fools aren't suffered, and you'd better have a decent signal, or no one's going to talk to you next time if you've got a horrible signal on 4 meters. And there's a lot more time for chatting to people. And I think that comes from the fact that it's only the last 10, 15 years there's been commercially available stuff for 4 meters. It always used to be homebrewed equipment or modified equipment, and there was an ethos of you'd have to put some real effort in to get a 4 meter station, and so there was always time to encourage people who were on 4 meters to keep using it and to go further. I think we might be it's solar maximums coming up, and 10 meters is rather good fun. at the maximum. So there's a possibility. There's some of the guys have said, yeah, should we do something on HF? And we might put an HF station on. And if we do, my interest will be to, I think we've got a 5 or 7 element HF Yagi amongst all the antennas in various garages. And I know we've got a crank up or a wind and assemble 60-foot mast. It's some ex-MOD thing. So if we did something on HF, it would be that Yagi. It's small by some people's HF standards. That Yagi on a 60-foot mast with the full beams behind it, and just do 10 meters and see how many DXCCs we can work in a contest. That would be the only reason I'd do it. I mean, I do lots of HF. I do a huge amount of SOTA and HF and QRPCW activation. And the HF contests, they don't really appeal in the same way as VHF. But a big station just to do 10 meters at the maximum and see, can we get DXCC? Can we get 2 times DXCC in a 24-hour period would be, that would be fun in my view. Other people may or may not agree, but I think that could be entertaining to try. You only get to do it every 11 years as well. So that's another reason why it's worth trying.
Good, thank you. Thanks to all of you. And just as add a sort of postscript to that, Ian GM3 SEK says the 24-hour or even 6-hour VHF contests can be much more relaxed than the monthly 2.5-hour UK activity contests, which are much more time limited. And of course, that might be one of the reasons as well, because you have more time to do it. Now, I've got a nice question for you now, all of you really. Have you ever had to abandon a camp? And if so, what happened? That's Gary Rogers asked that.
Yes.
Yes.
I must be weather, surely. No?
Yes.
I went a long time back. It was one of our early excursions into the Pentland Hills south of Edinburgh. Back in the AM days, we were on top of West Kip and the weather turned nasty and the tent blew away. And this was in the middle of the night. We went down into a barn that the farmer had, and he was very considerate and came along and got a fire going in a fireplace and warmed us all up and everything. But in the morning the weather had improved and simmered down, and we went back up the hill and recovered the equipment. The equipment all survived, but we didn't. I think that's the only time we really had a sort of emergency. So I think there was once, I could think of another occasion at Gatehouse of Fleet where we finished early because the weather was just so awful, it was just miserable. But if you're going to go contesting regularly, these things are going to happen. It doesn't always work.
You've definitely got to have a sense of humour, because at the end of the day, the weather. I think the weather's really the killer. Because I mean, I remember I was only 17 or 18, and I went up to IO93 with the Stockport group then, and I was put on 70 SEMs in a well, it was a bit of a shaky tent to start with, and there's this amplifier in front of me with a pair of 250s in it, and the only way it would run was the lid off it. So all there was 2 kV plus just sitting there in front of me, and then the rain started, and then there was more rain inside the tent than there was out, and it was dripping onto this thing, and it was fizzing and popping and all sorts. And you think, well, hang on a minute, am I more likely to get electrocuted here? Or but the thing is, when you're out portable, quite often the weather changes so quickly, and you've gone through an evening and night of absolute torrential rain, and then you wake up at 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden the sun's out. So, like I say, you've got to have a sense of humour when you do it.
Yeah. I mean, we had a problem with thunder and lightning when I was contesting down in Wales, and it was the 77's low power we were doing, and we could hear the thunder rumbling. When you're on top of a mountain, you can hear the thunder from a lot further away, and we could hear it on the radio on 70, and it was getting closer when we thought, yeah, this is stupid. Now we have a big lightning attractor set up, and we're all sitting at the bottom of it. So we took the station down, and we packed everything into cars. And just as we were driving away, there was a BT comms tower there, and that took a direct hit to one of the lightning conductors. And it's half impressive when there's a lightning strike about sort of 30, 40 meters away, because it doesn't rumble. There's just this sort of screech and a very, very, very loud bang. And everyone's sort of like got ringing ears and wondering what's going on. So we drove down the hill very fast then. But that's the only time in 30 odd years I've done an actual abandoned ship. Other than, as Brian said, I can remember that contest. The rain had been horizontal for most of the time, and occasionally was going uphill as well. And that's when we thought, yeah, no, we've had enough of this. It's time to go home.
We had a glider nearly hit us once, and it actually crash landed about 200 meters away. Fortunately, it missed the 417s that we had up on top of one another. It just missed that, and then it crash landed a few hundred meters away. So that was quite exciting.
It sounds good. My local club, the Norfolk Amateur Radio Club, were out at Trimmingham this weekend for the VHF event, and there was horizontal rain there as well, I could assure you. I haven't seen rain going upwards yet, but still. Tom Eleanor asks, I've got 4 antennas on a single mast. I put 6 metre between 2 metre and 70 sems. Is this a good idea, Tom asks.
I've tried that. At the beginning of my first slide, had my antenna on. I'd be more inclined to have the 6 and 4 at the bottom and then go upwards, to be honest.
Actually, it just makes me think there's more leverage when the wind's blowing. If you've got the heavier antenna higher up, you want that lower down to minimise the turning momentum on the bearings on your rotator.
That's right. Think about your rotator, because obviously the higher it up it is, it could shear your brake and everything in the rotator. So I'd go for nearer the bottom as possible, and then put the others on up further up.
G4SHF has put a note after that question, and just says that dual band Yagis have made this rather easier than it was. So I guess that will help, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, they in themselves have brought people onto both bands, where quite often you would have to choose between, do I go on 4 or do I go on 6? So yes, they've been a fantastic idea.
Thanks. Colin in VK has got a kind of statement here, but we can turn it into a question. He says, your foundation guys and gals, we have more luck during field day now. Sorry, you will have, I think he means, will have more luck doing field day now with 25 watts. And he wonders if VK will ever follow. I guess none of us probably know the answer to that. But even though it's only just a couple of weeks now that it's happened, did you notice any more contacts this weekend, maybe from foundation licensees, because we can, foundation licensees can operate at 25 watts, any of you?
Yes, definitely. I work loads more M7s than I have done previously.
Anybody on the Lothians team?
Well, we've not been on, but we'll find out in May and let you know.
Right. Okay, but I mean, I guess that is a significant, possibly arguably the most significant increase, actually, from 10 to 25. That will make quite a difference, won't it?
Yeah. See, the problem is that the further you go up the country, 10 watts, your return for 10 watts becomes less and less and less and less and less. So that little bit of extra power will certainly make a difference, and it makes it more interesting for people who are entering for the first time. They come on with 10 watts and they hardly get up to anybody, and then they think, well, I'll tell you what, well, I'm not too keen on that, I won't bother next time. So yeah, it's a good step forward, that.
Okay, thank you. couple of things on rules now. From ADG6AD, a question: can we expect any relaxing of the RSGB membership criteria to participate in this contest in the future? So one for you, Richard, I think.
We've discussed this many times, and I mean there are enough contests. We kind of believe that you don't actually have to be a member of the RSGB. You can be a member of an affiliated society.
So if your club is a member of the RSGB, then that will cover you to enter these contests as an individual, will it?
In I think in the UKACs, certainly. At some point you have to draw the line as to who, the RSG, it's an RSGB contest. So you kind of really, in the bigger contests, you kind of really need to be a member, to be honest.
Okay, thank you. And similarly on rules, and I guess something that is controversial, I certainly hear it for HF contests. Terry G3VFC says, some folk give real reports, others say 5-9, please repeat your details. Any hope for a rule change which encourages meaningful exchanges, at least on VHF? I guess one more for you, Richard.
Well, I had this on exactly the same problem on the weekend just gone with a French station. It took me nearly 10 minutes to work in, and he still gave me a 5-9 report. Now, the problem is that it seems to have become convention just to put 5-9 in. Now, I tend to give, this business of real report is a bit relative anyway, because it depends on the rig, blah, 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 blah. But you're not giving 5-9 all the time. If I give particularly a continental station 5-7, you know perfectly well that they're going to log it at 5-9. Particularly when they don't copy you so well, like the couple of them did at the weekend. So I think it's difficult to legislate for. It's certainly something we can have a look at the next contest committee meeting.
Thank you.
Just send us an email in VHFCC query at VHFCC.org, RSGBCC.org. Yeah.
Can you give that address one more time for us?
It's VHF query.
All one word.
VHF.query. Yep, at RSGBCC.org.
Okay, and I guess it'll be on the RSGB website, that contact details as well. One more question now, and you've all done really well for lots of questions, and thank you for everybody who's entered, asked us a question or made a comment. One final question then, this is from Ian PA0RNH. He says, can I work the contest from Holland? I am a member of the RSGB.
Yeah. Absolutely.
This is the field day, I guess the main VHF field day event at least.
Well, if he's stroke P, that'll be interesting. I mean, he could certainly enter the sweeper section if he's a fixed station. That's probably the defining factor really.
Great.
Because there is an overseas. What we tend to do is we split the results into like UK stations, and then there is the overseas sort of certificate for the highest overseas station.
Lovely. Thank you very much, Richard, and lots of compliments, by the way, and thanks and everything from all the people as well on the chat. Thanks very much to them.
No problem. Thank you.
And thanks to all of you this evening, all our presenters this evening. That's Richard, Andy, Brian and John. And thanks also to the team who helped put this webinar series together behind the scenes. Now, in next month's Tonight at 8 webinar, we'll be learning more about the HF aurora reflections as observed at Anchorage in Alaska, USA, with presenter Whittam Reeve. The RSGB Annual General Meeting will be held online on Saturday the 13th of April. As well as the formal part of the event, which includes the results of the elections, you'll be able to watch the President's Review of the Year and find out the recipients of the RSGB's annual awards and the winners of the construction competition. This year there will be 3 ways to ask a question of the RSGB board: via email in advance, or on YouTube live chat, and also via live video on Zoom. To find out more about voting and how to ask a question, visit the RSGB website at rsgb.org/AGM. And if you'd like to see details of future webinars or watch recordings of previous programmes in this series, please visit rsgb.org/webinars, where you can also send us comments and feedback. And if you subscribe to the RSGB's YouTube channel, you'll be notified of all upcoming Tonight at 8 webinars, as well as other new videos and presentations from the Society on a wide range of amateur radio topics. Until next time, this is David G7URP signing off and clear. Bye-bye.